Good afternoon, welcome, and thank you all for being here. As a reminder, masks are required in federal government buildings. Bonjour, bienvenue à tous et merci d'être parmi nous aujourd'hui. Un petit rappel que les masques
A gentle reminder that masks are obligatory in all federal buildings.
serve international trade, export promotion, small business, and economic development, and her counterpart, Ambassador Katherine Tai, the United States Trade Representative. Je suis heureuse de vous présenter la ministre Mary Ng, ministre responsable du commerce.
I'm happy to introduce Mrs. Mary Ng, who is in charge of trade and economic development for the U.S., as well as her her counterpart, who is in charge of trade relations for the U.S.
Supply chain issues and ongoing efforts to support Ukraine. Their remarks will be followed by a Q&A session. La ministre Ng et l'ambassadrice Tai vont survoler plusieurs enjeux d'actualité, tels que le besoin de renforcer les relations commerciales entre le Canada et les États-Unis, la coopération qu'il faut favoriser face aux problèmes des chaînes d'approvisionnement mondiales et les efforts continus qu'on doit maintenir pour soutenir l'Ukraine. Leurs allocutions seront suivies par une séance de questions et réponses. Without further ado, over to Minister Ng. Sans plus tarder, je cède la parole à la ministre Ng.
Well, hello everyone. Bonjour. Thank you so much for joining me and for Tai here today. Merci de vous joindre à la...
Thank you for joining me, Katherine Tai, and myself.
That we are gathered on the traditional and unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. And for those of us who are settlers or immigrants to Canada, it's important to recognize that Indigenous peoples were the keepers of this land and that we all have a role to play in reconciliation. Well, Katherine, welcome to Canada.
Thank you so much, Delighted to be here.
It's great to have Ambassador Tai here on her first visit to Canada. And I remember vividly when we met how quickly we bonded over shared values and our shared vision for a more competitive, more inclusive, and greener North America. And we're also meeting today during a time of global uncertainty around the world as we are rebuilding from COVID-19, from this pandemic, and Russia continues its unjustified war on Ukraine. It's more important now than ever that we build on the strength of our relationship, our partnership, and that we grow our trade and strengthen our supply chains by friendshoring with trusted countries. We've done this for 150 years. Canada and the United States will continue to stand together as trusted partners to face challenges head-on, armed with our shared and deeply rooted values. Katherine and I also discussed how to build on the success of CUSMA and to keep bringing more opportunities to Canadian businesses and workers. Building on what Prime Minister Trudeau and President Biden said on the roadmap for a renewed Canada-U.S. partnership, the partnership between our countries endures because we invest in each other's success. There's no better proof than the record-breaking trade year that we just had, which reached over $1 trillion. These numbers are more than just a bunch of zeros, and there's lots of zeros after $1 trillion. But it really does represent investments, jobs, and it represents growth in our families and our people. And not just any growth, we're driving towards inclusive and sustainable growth. We need to keep working hard so that trade can benefit everyone, including workers and small businesses and those that are underrepresented in our communities. Canada and the United States are committed to sustainable growth, driven by our mutual commitments to reaching net zero by 2050 and investments in our integrated supply chains, whether they be clean tech, critical minerals, or electric vehicles. This afternoon, both Katherine and I are going to be meeting with labor groups. Tomorrow, we're heading to Toronto, where we will meet with small and medium-sized businesses who are looking to grow and to scale their businesses. We're also going to take a trip to visit General Motors in Markham, and we're going to see the integrated supply chains at work, especially around electric vehicles. And with GM, Canada and the U.S.'s recent commitments to increasing the number of EVs on the roads in North America, we know that there will be a little part of Canada in every electric vehicle that is going to be built and made by GM. And our trading relationship undoubtedly is complex, but it doesn't just work well. It works better than any other in the world. So let me conclude by saying this. Catherine, it's even more special for you to be here during Asian Heritage Month. And I'm really looking forward to us having hot pot tomorrow. Ensemble, nous surmonterons les défis colossaux du.
So together we'll be able to tackle head-on the different challenges which we will be facing now and in future.
Ambassador Tai, merci beaucoup. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mary. I'm just delighted to be here in Canada, to be your guest, and I did not know about Hot Pot tomorrow night, and I'm definitely looking forward to that. Good afternoon, everyone. I want to begin by thanking Minister Ng for hosting me. We just had a very productive meeting, and I'm excited about our positive, forward-looking agenda for our countries and this region. Today in Ottawa and tomorrow in Toronto, Minister Ng and I will join a series of roundtable discussions with stakeholders, including one with labor leaders this afternoon that I'm particularly looking forward to discuss the future of the U.S.-Canadian trade relationship. We will tour businesses, meet with entrepreneurs, and determine how our governments can collaborate to advance our shared interests under the framework of what we call the USMCA, from building resilient supply chains, as the minister mentioned, to combating climate change, to defending the rights of our workers. The trade relationship between our countries has never been more important. By more than 20%, 1/6 of all U.S. goods exports go to Canada. For nearly 2 years now, since its entry into force in July 2020, the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement has been the foundational pillar in our bilateral trade relationship and our work to make our region more economically competitive. Important upgrades in the agreement are high standard, enforceable labor and environmental provisions, helping us make trade a race to the top. By raising regional standards, we can set an example for the world to follow, defend the rights of our workers, and help combat climate change. Our work does not end once the agreement is signed and delivered. Trade agreements and trade engagement more broadly requires constant care and attention. We have to make sure our agreements and frameworks remain relevant. We have to ensure that they can properly address today's challenges rather than become outdated relics. And we have to use these platforms to resolve our differences. Minister Ng and I will hold a series of events with key stakeholders. We will visit businesses that benefit from a strong and vibrant U.S.-Canadian trade relationship. We will hear what they need from government in order to successfully compete abroad. Of course, the strength of this relationship is not solely defined by trade. The United States and Canada are bound by our shared ideals, including our commitment to democratic values, the rights of our workers, and defending ourselves against autocracies that undermine the rules-based multilateral trading system and respect for international law. This is especially true as our countries have worked closely together to punish and denounce President Putin for his premeditated, unprovoked, and unjustified war in Ukraine. I want to conclude by recognizing that May marks Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander Heritage Month in the United States and Asian Heritage Month here in Canada. The theme for this month in the U.S. is Building Legacy Together, Our Communities, Journey of Strength and Resilience, while in Canada it is Continuing a Legacy of Greatness. Throughout this month, our countries will celebrate the history and achievements of our Asian communities and their resilience, respective trade representatives. As a proud Canadian and American, to celebrate the contributions of our communities to our respective countries. It is also an opportunity for us to recommit to the job of helping the next generation of women Asian trade leaders so that their path to success is a little bit easier. Tomorrow night in Toronto, in fact, Minister Ng and I will participate in a panel discussion on exactly how we do this. Promoting women Asian leaders in our countries is necessary to make our societies more diverse and equitable, something that we are both very committed to. I'm excited to have that conversation, and I'm looking forward to all of our events during my time here. Thank you very much.
We will now take questions from media. We will start in the room here and go to media on the phone afterwards. One question and one follow-up only. Procédons maintenant aux questions des journalistes. Commençons avec les journalistes dans la salle et on passera ensuite aux journalistes qui sont au téléphone. Une seule question et un seul suivi.
Hello, Ambassador Tai. It's David Cochran with CBC News. I'm wondering if you could comment on the process you've started to review the tariffs that were imposed on China. I know there's been some suggestion that this could help ease inflation, which I know you take some issue with the veracity of the studies on that. But more broadly, I wonder, what message does it send to a country like China if you lift these tariffs? We know they've engaged in things like hostage diplomacy. They've cracked down on dissent in Hong Kong, increasingly hostile to Taiwan. I wonder if you have any thoughts on what message would be sent to the country.
I have a lot of thoughts on this, and I want to assure you and everyone else that the issue of the U.S.-China bilateral trade relationship is one that we take very seriously in the Biden administration. It being the economic relationship between the two largest economies in the world, it has consequences not just for us, but for the rest of the world, including our friends here in Canada. With respect to your question, let me just back you up a little bit. And I think that you're asking about the notice that we've just put out around a review of the existing tariffs. And I just want to focus you because you called it a process, or in Canada what you call a process. And I speak a little Canadian. And just focus on the fact that it is exactly that. We are starting a process that has a robust consultative mechanism. It's a notice to which we expect a lot of comment and feedback from all sectors of our economy. That's the part I want to put the emphasis on, because I want to make clear that when it comes to making decisions about our economy with impacts for the world economy, we don't make those decisions in a vacuum. And so without skipping ahead to what's going to happen later on, let me just focus on how important this process is and how important it is for us to hear from all of our stakeholders across the economy.
And a follow-up for both ministers, both if possible. Moving beyond China, moving beyond Russia, do countries like the United States and Canada and other Western democracies need to strongly reconsider the whole notion of trade with autocratic countries? We know the tensions with China. We know what everybody is doing to deal with Russia. But moving beyond them, does this need to be reconsidered in terms of how we do business?
I'll start with this and give you a brief answer and then turn it over to Minister Ng, which is, I think that in the past couple years, and you've asked about autocracies, and I think that maybe you're keying off of specifically the Russian invasion of Ukraine, but I think, the last couple years we've also gone through a global public health crisis, a pandemic that's disrupted supply chains and continues to discombobulate the world economy. I think that for us, we are placing a real focus on risk and how we address risk in global supply chains. That is a lot of the conversation between us and in the international economic system, especially with our close allies and our partners. And I think that with respect to autocracies, what you're highlighting is that there is a particular risk that we are realizing in terms of the trade relationships that we have with countries who present a high profile in terms of risk, and that is absolutely a part of the larger program.
Well, David, thank you for that important question. And as you know, I mean, Canada enters into our trading relationships in a way that really leads with the values that are important to Canadians. And those values are a strong defense of the international rules-based system, including the trading system. So the relationship between Canada, the U.S., and Mexico, underscored by the really important agreement that we have recently renegotiated and that we work under, is an example of how we would continue these important relationships with those trading partners who also share those very, very important values. You heard me say a little earlier that friendshoring and working with those countries and trading partners to find that resiliency is extremely important. And as the ambassador said, we've seen the fragilities that occurred during the pandemic, and the need for us to continue to work with those trading partners who value and respect the rule of law, the rules that bind us in our trading relationships. But what that really means is for the businesses and the people of Canada and those among our partners is this ability to have the trusted relationships in those supply chains, and that we can count on each other, and that we have the rules and the mechanisms to do business and to continue to do business and to resolve issues. So Canada very much does business, will continue to do business, will trade, underscored by the values that are important to Canadians.
Hi, Zian Lam with Politico. This is a question for you both. Could you both provide an update on where things stand on resolving the dairy TRQ dispute? And do you expect to have a resolution before the USMCA or CUSMA Secretariat meeting in July?
Well, let me start there. And I will say that it's terrific to have in a trading partner in Ambassador Tai, where we both agree that our obligations under our international agreements, that being CUSMA or USMCA, is something that we take very seriously. Canada will certainly implement the findings of the panel report and to reach a solution. We've been working very hard with our stakeholders here in Canada, but also with our partners in the United States. And we know how important this issue is to our farmers and to the industry and to the workers whom they employ. And in the spirit of making sure we are living up to our agreements, I want to assure Canadians that we will be doing that. And Ambassador Tai and I had an opportunity to connect on this issue.
For my part, let me say that one of the benefits of the U.S.-Canada relationship, and then my relationship with Minister Ng, is that it demonstrates the strength of and the durability of the U.S.-Canada partnership. And part of that is, yes, we work together where, and we have a lot of room for collaboration in areas where our interests naturally align. But part of that also is working through difficult issues where our systems and our perspectives do not align. And I think on the dairy issue, that is one of the difficult areas in this relationship. It is a long-standing, difficult part of this relationship, and our relationship between Minister Ng and myself allows me to be unflinchingly honest about our expectations. And she knows that I, in my position, work closely with Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack to champion the interests of our dairy farmers. And I know that it is part of her job to do the same for her dairy farmers. So, let me just underscore that we are talking about this. We had a good and honest conversation, and we're going to keep working on this.
Okay, now I want to talk about energy. So both Canada and the U.S. have expressed concerns about Mexico's energy policies, threatening the U.S. and Canadian investments in Mexico's renewable energy sector. So have you discussed the possibility of filing a joint WTO case against Mexico?
Do you want me to start?
Sure.
Okay. Energy security is, of course, very important. The relationship between Canada, U.S., and Mexico is one that continues, as the ambassador says. You don't finish at an agreement. You need to continue working on this. On this very issue, I have had several opportunities to raise this issue and the concerns of Canadian investors in Mexico, and that work continues, and that work also continues together with our partner in the United States.
So, as U.S. Trade Representative, I've raised our concerns as a country and as an administration about the energy policies in Mexico. We are looking at all options. We are looking very carefully at the USMCA, and throughout the year plus that I've been in my position, ministering and I have been talking to our counterpart in Mexico City, but also have been sharing our concerns with each other.
Murad Hamadi, The Logic. Ambassador Tai, last year it was reported that the Biden administration was drafting a digital trade agreement that would cover data mobility, trade facilitation, and other digital issues. Have you invited Canada, or do you plan to participate in a new multilateral digital trade agreement, or perhaps the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework?
So I'm not quite sure what you're referring to in terms of drafting a digital trade agreement, but certainly talking about rules that cover the digital economy is something that is coming up in lots of different circumstances and different forums. You know, I think that this is an area where the digital transformations of our economies is happening at a very fast pace. And our own regulations domestically, and certainly also our international trade rules are lagging where our economies are. So this is an area where I think that we are all very interested in engaging. And let me just leave it there.
So for this one, perhaps we could start with Ambassador Tai, and then if Minister Ng wants to weigh in as well. Canada's last budget included $3.8 billion to develop critical minerals, and governments here at both provincial and federal levels are spending billions in subsidies to get EVs produced here. Now, at the same time this is happening, President Biden is repeating the language of Buy American and Made in America in the States. How can we have a genuinely integrated North American supply chain if Canada's always worried about the U.S. throwing up barriers to selling Canadian-made products in the U.S.?
Well, I think that with respect to what President Biden is saying on Buy America and Buy America, let's just be very, very clear. Those are federal procurement policies. And Canada has federal procurement policies as well. I wouldn't characterize that championship by President Biden as a barrier that the administration is throwing into the U.S.-Canadian trade relationship.
Murad, on that, on your question, the ambassador and I are going to visit General Motors tomorrow in Markham. And I think what she will see there is the integration of this really important sector. And of course, with both of our commitment to building, to fighting climate change and continuing to build automobiles together, she's going to see that sort of really at work tomorrow. And we've been building autos for over 100 years, and for the last 50 years, very deliberately so, through deliberate policies that have integrated our auto supply chains. And the future is electric. And I know that you have covered many of the announcements that my colleague Minister Champagne has made of late, and that is billions of dollars in investments that are coming into Canada to build out a battery ecosystem, where we are going to invest in, of course, critical minerals, which is the beginning of that value chain, but from critical minerals to batteries, to electric batteries that will go into those electric vehicles. So I'm very much looking forward to continuing our work with the United States to deepen and to strengthen the automobile sector, and the future in automobile is electric, and we're going to be working with the United States on this.
Hi, Neil Moss from the Hill Times. For both of you, with the disputes we've seen over the last, I guess, since the Biden administration came to power, why shouldn't Canadians feel pessimistic about the trading relationship with the U.S. where these continuing disputes pop up?
Well, we have Canada-U.S. I would characterize our trading relationship, as I said at the outset, as one that is strong, and I think that strength, you're seeing it in the trade numbers. We did over $1 trillion in trade just last year. We are seeing the highest trading volumes in surplus that we have that are just historic. And of course, in a relationship as large as the one between Canada and the United States, of course there are going to be issues. The question really is, how are you going to work on those issues together? And I think what you're seeing here between Ambassador Tai and I is our ability through the good vehicle that is CUSMA, but also through our relationship and the commitment between Canada and the United States, and certainly through President Biden and Prime Minister Trudeau on the renewed roadmap between Canada and the United States, that this is work that we will continue to do, because where our interests are is coming out of a pandemic where we must work together so that we are rebuilding our economies and making sure that our supply chains are resilient. We are working in a global environment right now where we are seeing this unjustified, illegal war that Russia has waged on the Ukraine, and you've seen Canada and the United States collaborate to with sanctions and a range of measures to isolate Russia, but also a range of measures to assist Ukraine. But are there issues? Of course there are. Are there ways to work them out? Of course there are, and that is why I am just so pleased that that Katherine is here. This is her first visit. It isn't the first time that she and I have been able to see each other. We have spent time at different forums, multilateral forums, although in the very first part of our relationship, we did spend it on looking at each other through little screens on, little squares on a screen. But it is just, I'm so pleased that you are here, because it really does signify the importance of this relationship, and I get an opportunity to show her really sort of on the ground our people, our workers, our businesses, and really what this Canada-U.S. relationship and opportunity continues to be.
So for my part, because I'm looking at these cameras, I think that, what I'll say is this: when you zoom your camera in and you look at the disagreements that we have, because we do have disagreements, if you define your world that way, then yes, there are a lot of disagreements between us. But if you zoom out, right, and you look at the fact that the United States and Canada exist in a larger world, then you start to see the real strength and durability of this relationship. Whether it's with respect to our coordinated, quick, and strong actions in response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine, or, if you look at our partnership under the USMCA, and here I will speak some more Canadian and call it the CUSMA, these are foundational pillars and demonstrations of our partnership in the larger world. And I think that in the context of North America, it is very clear that the success of your economy, your workers, means success for our economy and our workers, and vice versa. And then if you also look at the larger world, policies that erode your industries are the same policies that erode our industries. And we did spend time today also talking about another point on solar. And I think that is another example where, if you zoom in close, you see that as a dispute between the two of us. But if you zoom out, you realize that we are in this together in terms of competing within a world where we've got competitors that are really fierce, and we need to work together to meet those challenges. So again, I want to emphasize the durability and strength of this relationship and the real friendship between our countries and also between us as counterparts.
And from the American side, obviously, there's been a rethinking of how Canada is going to orient itself in the Indo-Pacific region. Is the Biden administration looking forward to Canada revealing an Indo-Pacific framework?
With respect to partners in the Indo-Pacific, I think that we all realize that those relationships are critical. And I look forward to continuing conversations with Mary about Canada's perspective, and look for opportunities for coordination as well.
We will now take questions over the phone. Nous allons maintenant répondre aux questions par téléphone.
Thank you. Merci. If you
Thank you.
press *1 on your device's keypad. Si vous avez une question, veuillez s'il vous plaît appuyer sur les touches étoile 1 de votre appareil. The first question is from David Lauder from Reuters. Please go ahead. Your line is open.
Hi, thanks for the opportunity. David Lauder, Reuters in Washington. I wanted to follow up on the CBC's question about the China tariff review. Ambassador Tai, there's a number of officials in the Biden administration that have made comments recently about tariffs. Dalip Singh, Secretary Yellen, about the possibility of using some reductions of those tariffs, particularly on consumer goods, not strategic goods, as a way to fight inflation, to reduce the cost of those imports. I'm just wondering where you are on that. Do you see that as a viable use of that, or do you see the tariffs as leverage over China and getting it to comply with its trade commitments? I'm just wondering if you feel like you need to get something in return for if the administration is to ultimately reduce some of those tariffs. Thank you.
Thank you, David. I'm sorry that you're not here so that I can give you kudos for persistence in pursuing these lines of questions, because I know this is a question that everybody wants to ask me. Look, this isn't an academic exercise. The U.S.-China trade relationship, as I noted earlier, and that I consistently note, is of profound consequence, not just to our two countries, but to the entire world. And being here in Ottawa, just acknowledge, is also important to this relationship and something that we talk about quite a bit. So instead of opining on, macroeconomic theory, let me just say this. It is important for us to focus on a durable, effective strategy with respect to our ability to compete with China in this global environment and through this very disruptive period that we are experiencing right now that is causing pain to the ordinary American back at home. So, let me just focus on process, on hearing from the American people, our workers, our businesses, large and small, also from our trading partners. What we need to do is be smart and strategic and ensure that we carve out a path where we emerge from this period of disruption stronger and with our durable and good relationships with our partners intact. Thank you.
Follow-up, Mr. Lauder?
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I get a follow-up. But in terms of leverage, though, do you feel like the tariffs still give you leverage over China in their meeting their commitments?
David, since you're going to ask me the same question, I'm going to give you the same answer, which is let's focus on what we're going to do and how we make ourselves stronger in a very competitive and challenging global economic environment.
This concludes today's press conference. Thank you again for joining us today. Should media have any additional questions, kindly contact Global Affairs Canada's Media Relations line. Ceci conclut notre conférence de presse aujourd'hui. Merci encore de vous être joints à nous. Si vous avez des questions supplémentaires, veuillez communiquer avec les relations médiatiques d'Affaires mondiales Canada. Merci.